individuals who we are continuing to allow God's blessings to shine upon. Today we are looking at Numbers chapter 26. Now, I said that there's some things in here that I want to point out. Okay, first of all, let me just be straight up and honest. This chapter is boring. It's Somonex. It's sleep time. It's counting sheep. You want to know why the book of Numbers is called Numbers? Because we're going to be numbering a bunch of people right here. Now, we did this in the beginning in Numbers chapter 1 and 2. And so we're going to get in here. Now, the other thing is, even though it's boring, and it's just a lot of names, reading off and numbers and stuff like that, it's also a genealogy, and it's talking about a family. Okay? Now, when you start naming people in the family, you know how you want to name family, especially you want to name, oh, you remember Uncle so-and-so and Aunt so-and-so and cousin this, and you talk about all those good people, right? The people that your family really appreciate. Sometimes you got that other family member that got that issue, got that situation going on, and his name don't come up around the dinner table. And so you don't mention that family member. Well, God don't work like that. God's going to give you the family. He's going to give you the list. He's going to give you the number. He's going to talk about the individuals and different things. But he's also going to bring up those family members that you might not want to have a conversation about. And that's the part that we're going to kind of look at too as well. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get the reading in. It's a long chapter too. That's another thing. So we're dealing with 65 verses, a bunch of names, and a bunch of numbers. But if you look in here, you will find some things that will help and bless your soul. And that's what we're praying and asking God to do. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Numbers chapter 26. Let's take a listen. Well, you know what? Let me give you the ability to hear it. Put that on. There we go. All right, let's take a listen. Numbers 26.
Chapter 26. And it came to pass after the plague that the Lord spake unto Moses and unto Eleazar the son of Aaron the priest, saying, Take the sum of all the congregation of the children of Israel, from 20 years old and upward, throughout their father's house, all that are able to go to war in Israel. And Moses and Eleazar the priest spake with them in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho, saying,
Take the sum of the people, from 20 years old and upward,
as the Lord commanded Moses and the children of Israel, which went forth out of the land of Egypt. Reuben, the eldest son of Israel, the children of Reuben, Hanoch, of whom cometh the family of the Hanochites, of Palu, the family of the Paluites, of Hezron, the family of the Hezronites, of Carmi, the family of the Carmites. These are the families of the Reubenites, and they that were numbered of them were 43,730. And the sons of Palu, Eliab, and the sons of Eliab, Nebuel, and Dathan, and Abiram. This is that Dathan and Abiram, which were famous in the congregation, who strove against Moses and against Aaron in the company of Korah, when they strove against the Lord. And the earth opened her mouth, and swallowed them up together with Korah, when that company died, what time the fire devoured 250 men, and they became a sign. Notwithstanding the children of Korah died not. The sons of Simeon after their families, of Nemuel, the family of the Nemuelites, of Jamin, the family of the Jaminites, of Jachin, the family of the Jachinites,
Yes, sir.
of Zerah, the family of the Zerites, of Shaul, the family of Shaulites. These are the families of the Simeonites, 20 and 2,200. The children of Gad, after their families, the family of the Zephonites, of Haggai, the family of the Haggites, of Shunai, the family of the Shunites, of Ozni, the family of the Oznites, of Edai, the family of Edites, of Arad, the family of the Arodites, of Areli, the family of the Arelites. These are the families of the children of Gad, according to those that were numbered of them, 40,500. The sons of Judah were Er and Onan, and Er and Onan died in the land of Canaan. And the sons of Judah, after their families, were of Shelah, the family of the Shelanites, of Pharez, the family of the Pharezites, Of Zerah, the family of the Zarites. And the sons of Pharez were, of Hezron, the family of the Hezronites. Of Hamul, the family of the Hamulites. These are the families of Judah according to those that were numbered of them, 16,500. Of the sons of Issachar, after their families, of Tola, the family of the Tolaites. Of Puah, the family of the Punites. Of Jashub, the family of the Jashubites. Of Shimron, the family of the Shimronites. These are the families of Issachar, according to those that were numbered of them, 4,300. Of the sons of Zebulun, after their families, of Sered, the family of the Sarkites. Of Elon, the family of the Elonites. Of Jalil, the family of the Jalilites. These are the families of the Zebulunites, according to those that were numbered of them, 3,500. The sons of Joseph after their families were Manasseh and Ephraim. Of the sons of Manasseh, of Machir, the family of the Machirites, and Machir begat Gilead. Of Gilead come the family of the Gileadites. These are the sons of Gilead. Of Jeezer, the family of the Jeezerites. Of Helek, the family of the Helekites. And of Asrael, the family of the Asraelites. And of Shechem, the family of the Shechemites. And of Shemida, the family of the Shemidaites. And of Hepher, the family of the Hepherites. And Zelophehad, the son of Hepher, had no sons, but daughters. And the names of the daughters of Zelophehad were Mahlah and Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. These are the families of Manasseh, and those that were numbered of them, 52,700. These are the sons of Ephraim after their families, of Shuthelah, the family of the Shuthalites. Of Becher, the family of the Bachrites. Of Techan, the family of the Techanites. And these are the sons of Shuthelah. Of Iran, the family of the Iranites. These are the families of the sons of Ephraim, according to those that were numbered of them, 32,500. These are the sons of Joseph after their families. The sons of Benjamin after their families, of Bela, the family of the Belaites. Of Ashbel, the family of the Ashbelites. Of Ahiram, the family of Ahiramites. Of Shufam, the family of Shufamites. Of Hufam, the family of Hufamites. And the sons of Bela were Ard and Naaman. Of Ard, the family of the Ardites. And of Naaman, the family of the Naamites. These are the sons of Benjamin after their families, and they that were numbered of them were 45,600. These are the sons of Dan after their families, of Shuham, the family of the Shuhamites. These are the families of Dan after their families. All the families of the Shuhamites, according to those that were numbered of them, were 64,400. Of the children of Asher after their families, of Jimnah, the family of the Jimnites. Of Jesui, the family of the Jesuites. Of Beriah, the family of the Beraites. Of the sons of Beriah, of Heber, the family of the Heberites. Of Malkiel, the family of the Malkielites. And the name of the daughter of Asher was Sarah. These are the families of the sons of Asher, according to those that were numbered of them, who were 53,400. Of the sons of Naphtali, after their families, of Jalziel, the family of the Jalzielites. Of Gunai, the family of the Gunites. Of Jezer, the family of the Jezerites. Of Shillem, the family of the Shillemites. These are the families of Naphtali, according to their families, and they that were numbered of them were 45,400. These were the number of the children of Israel, 600,000 and 1,730. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Unto these the land shall be divided for an inheritance according to the number of names. To many thou shalt give the more inheritance, and to few thou shalt give the less inheritance. To every one shall his inheritance be given according to those that were numbered of him. Notwithstanding the land shall be divided by lot, according to the names of the tribes of their fathers they shall inherit. According to the lot shall the possession thereof be divided between many and few. And these are they that were numbered of the Levites after their families. Of Gershon, the family of the Gershonites. Of Kohath, the family of the Kohathites. Of Merari, the family of the Merarites. These are the families of the Levites, the family of the Libnites, the family of the Hebronites, the family of the Malites, the family of the Mushites, the family of the Korathites. And Kohath begat Amram. And the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare to Levi in Egypt. And she bare unto Amram Aaron and Moses, and Miriam their sister. And unto Aaron was born Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. And Nadab and Abihu died when they offered strange fire before the Lord. And those that were numbered of them were 23,000, all males from a month old and upward, for they were not numbered among the children of Israel, because there was no inheritance given them among the children of Israel. These are they that were numbered by Moses, and Eleazar the priest, who numbered the children of Israel in the plains of Moab by Jordan near Jericho. But among these there was not a man of them whom Moses and Aaron the priest numbered, when they numbered the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. For the Lord had said of them, They shall surely die in the wilderness. And there was not left a man of them, save Caleb the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua the son of Nun.
All right. So there we go.
Sir.
Everybody still awake?
Yes, sir.
This one could put you to sleep if you let it. All right. So let's go back and let's take a look. Like I said, there's a lot of just information in here. This is like reading a dictionary, reading a census book. And but if you go through it, you kind of look at it from a standpoint of there are things that the Lord points out, and you wonder sometimes, okay, why is He pointing it out? And I'm going to try to give an idea or a theory as to why He's pointing out a few of these things as we go through it. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to hit the high points here. We're not going to go through every one of these families listed. We're going to list the tribes and talk a little bit about each tribe, and then we're going to move on. But it starts off and says, and it came to pass. Now, we always talk to you and mention that when we start a chapter and it uses the word and, you do want to go back and get some other stuff that's happened. So what is happening? What are we coming off of? We're coming off of Balaam. Remember Balaam? We're coming off of the Moabite women coming in to the house, and the Midianite women, and these that committed whoredom with the men of Israel, and the atrocity and the death that took place. So we're coming off some very bad times. And so what does that speak of? So now we come off something that was really dramatic, some horrible things that were happening, and now we're coming to a point where that's has happened, it's been taken care of, and the Lord is ready to move on. What does this say about us? It says that one thing we should keep in mind is that when we are dealing with situations and problems, that we got to keep in mind that yes, these are going to come, but they're also going to move along too. They went through some horrible stuff when we connect that and to what happened in the past, but now they're moving along, and God is ready to deal with them. And we're going to talk about what is He ready to do. Let's take a look. So it says, and it came to pass after the plagues. Okay, we already talked about what those plagues were. That the Lord spake unto Moses and to Eleazar, son of Aaron. Okay, now we're looking at this historical chapter here. The Lord is talking to who? Moses and Eleazar. All right, so now why not Aaron? Because Aaron's already passed. He's already died. Remember, Aaron's already dead. Miriam's dead. Aaron's dead. And we're going to see here in a minute when we get towards the end that there's a reason why all of these individuals have passed. All right, and so what He said to them, He said, take a sum of the congregation of the children of Israel from 20 years old and upwards, throughout their father's house, all that are able to go to war in Israel. Now, we need to stop there. This may be a boring chapter, but there's your first hint right there of something that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. All right? We want to get a number of people that are ready to fight the enemy. And not just from a standpoint of the Lord coming in and giving you a spiritual victory. You're going to have to fight the enemy face to face. You're going to see the sweat of your enemy. You're going to smell the aroma and the odor of the person you're fighting. You're going to see the strength and the fierceness and the hatred that they have against you when you're going directly against them in the natural. So what that lets us know is that our battle is with our entire being. We fight the devil with our spirit, our soul, our body, everything that we have. We have to use it as a means to be prepared to do war. And it says everyone 20 years and upwards. And that speaks to a couple of things. Number one, people will say, well, I like to use that number for an age of accountability. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't see where that could be a problem. I just think God is probably more precise. Whereas each individual, God knows this individual understood things at 18. This one didn't understand things until he was 24. So I think a lot of times it may vary. But what I do know is whatever it is, God don't make a mistake. Now, in this particular time, he drew a line across the board for everybody. 20 years. That's the number. So if you're 19, you're not in this. But if you're over, well, my birthday was just yesterday. I turned 20. Well, you're part of the count. If we did this yesterday, you wouldn't account. But since we did it today and you're 20, it's going to count. All right? And sometimes God does things like that where he takes a precise measurement of how things actually are and then moves forward with that. And we can speak to a lot of things in our own personal lives with that. But he says we're going to look at the Father's house. In other words, we're going to see their history, their family history, which we just listened to, that are able to go to war in Israel. Who are you fighting for? You're fighting for Israel. What is Israel definition? Governed by God. So you're going to fight for the government of God. You're fighting for God's leadership. You're fighting for God's headship. You're fighting for Israel. All right? And then it goes on and it says that, and Moses and Eleazar the priest spake unto them in the plains of Moab. Oh, they're still there. In the place where they got enticed by those women. By Jordan near Jericho. Oh, and they're not too far from where they're going to have one of their first major battles. Okay? So you can see sometimes you come out of one thing, but you got to get ready and prepared to go into the next.
Leon has a question. He wants to know, who is Moab?
Moab is a nation, and that's the nation that was formed from what's his name? From Sodom and Gomorrah. What's his name? Lot. Formed from Lot. Lot's he's a descendant of Lot, and that happened when Lot's daughters deceived him, and they got him drunk, and they allowed Lot to impregnate them, his daughters, because they thought there was no man left. But that's how the nation of Moab came to be. All right. So now, when we get into this next portion here, these are just some of the names. Now, some of these names, some of these family names, have some family history that may not be all that wonderful and popular, but the scripture puts it in here, and we're going to talk a little bit about it. So we go to verse, and I'm going to do a little high point touching, so I'm going to skip around a little bit, so just follow along with me here. So we move into verse 5, and we see that Reuben, the eldest son of Israel, all right, and then it gives Reuben's name, and they give the family lineage behind him. I'm not reading those names, but I do want to go down to verse 9. And in verse 9, it says, and the sons of Elbad, Neamel, and Dathan, and Abiram. And look what it says. This is that Dathan and Abiram, which were famous in the congregation, who strove against Moses and against Aaron in the company of Korah. It says, and when they strove against the Lord. Okay, look at verse 10. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up together with Korah when the company died. And it says, what time the fire devoured 250 men, and they became a sign. All right. So in the family of Reuben, we got some people that wanted to say, well, you know what? Because Reuben is the what? Firstborn. But Reuben mishandled his lineage, his hold on the so-called firstborn rights because of what he did. Remember, Reuben went into one of his father's concubines and slept with her, and that messed Reuben up. But yet you can see, remember, Dathan and Abiram, they always thought that they should be the ruler. They should be the ones saying what they should have done. And they tried to strive against Moses and against Aaron. And, well, we remember the story. We won't go back and rehash the story. But they got squashed. The Lord came in against them because they were fighting against what God was trying to do. Dathan and Abiram are a good example of people that want to be spiritual, but want to do what they want to do. So they want to talk God, but they want to do what they want. And that makes them their what? I want to turn myself into my own spiritual deity. I'm going to follow my own ways. I want to be my own God. A lot of people have that kind of philosophy. All right? So let's keep going. If you skip down to verse 12, you'll see the sons of Simeon. And it lists the sons of Simeon. And if you notice, it don't have it. It just got verse 12. It listed the sons in verse 13 and verse 14. And Simeon is done. So Simeon right now don't have a whole lot of case history, a whole lot of stuff that's happened. He's been kind of like, dotting his I's and crossing his T's. And we don't have a whole lot of stuff to mention about Simeon as of right now. But, however, we do know Simeon was fierce. Simeon was one that would go out and do battle and war, because that happened when they had to deal with that nation when that prince took their sister and molested the sister. Simeon was one of the ones that went down there and they started killing all the men down there after they got them all circumcised and they couldn't fight back. All right. So we do know that about Simeon. All right. Verse 15 talks about Gad. And we got all of the stuff listed here about Gad. And there's not a whole lot listed. He does have a pretty large family. It covers 16, 17, and 18. Okay? And then we go down from Gad and we go to Judah in verse 19. Now, Judah, we see the listing and we see Pharez. There's some history behind Pharez. We saw that in the book of Genesis. I won't go back and rehash all of that. But if you look at that, but we do know this about Judah. Judah is the tribe. You say, well, if Reuben mishandled the inheritance of the firstborn, who rose up to become the leader and the matriarch of the clan? And that is Judah. All right. Eventually, Judah is the one in whom the Lord's going to come through. The scripture talks about Judah as that the Lord is the lion of the tribe of Judah. All right.
This is the tribe of Jesus, right?
Yes, it is. That's the one that the Lord Jesus came through. All right. Then we go down to verse 23, and we see Issachar. And Issachar is mentioned. Not a whole lot of stuff is said about him, just giving the family information. Then we go down to verse 26, and we see Zebulun. Very similar stuff. Not a whole lot of stuff said about Zebulun. Just some information about his family. Then we go down to verse 28, and we see Joseph. Now we see that Joseph is paused there for a moment, and it talks about not just Joseph, but about the grandsons who were integrated into the line of the tribes. So Joseph oftentimes is mentioned from the standpoint of Manasseh and Ephraim, and that's done here as well. And so then it goes on in verse 29, and it talks about Manasseh, and it gives the family, all right, of Manasseh. And it also mentions in verse 33 that there was Zelophehad who had no sons. and this person had just daughters. But we notice here that the daughters were mentioned. Now, I bring this up because one thing that I think is important to keep in mind, God has always had a structure of the standpoint where he says the men are supposed to stand forth and be the spiritual head or the spiritual beacon or the spiritual guide in the family. But the Lord also points out here by mentioning this individual that had no sons, we see that in verse 33, that the women then, because there was no man to do, the women then had to do what? They had to do. So keep in mind that there is never a situation where a woman can't do something. There is nothing that a woman can't do. A woman can do any and everything that God empowers her. When we get later on into the book of Judges, we're going to see that there are also situations where women have to become a judge, mainly because there was no man to rise up to the occasion. All right. And so I think it's important that we kind of mention that and we see that, even though, like I said, this is part of this very boring chapter. So we see something here that kind of, oh, okay, there's something that sticks up a little higher than the regular conversation, and it's worth mentioning. All right. In verse 35, we see Ephraim, the other half of Joseph, is mentioned. And once again, not a whole lot of stuff said about Ephraim. What we do know about Ephraim, going down the road, down the line, Ephraim is going to have a problem with staying connected to the things of God. All right. And I mention that now, right now, you don't see it. But as we go down the road and we get further along, this tribe is going to have a problem. And I want you to just be aware of it, so when we get to it, you'll be like, okay, we kind of saw that. In verse 38, we see the tribe of Benjamin. And once again, not a whole lot mentioned about them. And we know that Benjamin was born, and then right after that, his mother died. Rachel was his mother, and she died giving birth to him. Benjamin and Joseph are full brothers. They were both born from the mother Rachel. The rest of them were born from either Leah or one of the two concubines that were given to Joseph. I'm sorry, to Jacob. All right. Verse 42, we see the tribe of Dan. All right. Now, just like Ephraim, Dan is another tribe that's going to have a problem with idolatry. They, as a group, are going to kind of move off. All right. We don't see that here now, but we'll see it, as we move along. All right. 44, we see the tribe of Asher. Okay. And they are mentioned. And once again, not a whole lot said about Asher. And Asher is one of those tribes that is pretty quiet in Scripture. You don't see a whole lot of things mentioned about them. In verse 48, we see Naphtali. All right. And once again, that tribe, we don't see a whole lot said about them. And they seem to be a very a quiet tribe as far as having any type of scandals or things going on in their family structure. All right. So then when we get to verse 51, we see this. And it says, these were the numbered of the children of Israel, 600,000 and 1,730. Now, if you go back to the first and second chapter of Numbers, what you're going to find out is right now, there are less people than there were when they first numbered. And you say, well, okay, aren't they supposed to be fruitful and multiply? But why are there less people? Because of all the plagues, all the things. And remember, initially, they were supposed to go into the land, and when they went into the land and they saw all the giants in there, and they looked at the people that they had to conquer, and they looked at themselves, and they saw themselves as grasshoppers. And they didn't see the fact that, well, it doesn't matter what we look like. What matters is what God looks like. And God is bigger and greater than anybody. They did not have faith and confidence in God. They were trying to do it themselves. And that is one of the most common things with this entire walking through the wilderness that they are dealing with, is getting yourself out of the equation. If you can get yourself out of the equation and try to put God as the source, God as the engine to drive you forward, God as the reason for why you can have confidence and not fear, that sometimes is the stumbling block that we often come across.
Wayne.
Yes.
Leah has a question.
Okay.
What do you mean by like the grasshoppers?
Okay. Well, back in the a couple of chapters back, the children of Israel were led to the Canaan land where they were promised to go, the land of milk and honey. When they went to that land, they saw people that were really big and tall and strong. And they looked at those people and were making an analysis about how they looked in the sight of those people. So it said they look so tall and we look so small, it's almost as if we were grasshoppers. They looked at themselves until they were describing themselves as a grasshopper, as being weak and small and unable to fight. And the point is, if you see yourself as a grasshopper, that's fine, as long as you see God as the giant. You see God as the big power. You see God. But you also should keep in mind that if God has empowered you, then you are not a grasshopper. You are really a what? A child of God. And that's an important aspect about working and walking with the Lord. You have to not see yourself as insignificant if God empowers you. We are insignificant by ourselves, but not when God empowers us.
Wayne, she said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. All right. So now when we look at verse 53, it says, unto these the land shall be divided according to the number of the names. Okay, so what that means is there's going to be a giving out of the land. And we had already seen that it talked about them receiving an inheritance of land. Now, it says, look at verse 54. To many thou shalt give more inheritance, and to few thou shalt give less inheritance. To everyone shall his inheritance be given according to those that were numbered of him. So, once again, pulling this out of this, with this chapter being so mundane, you see little things that kind of stick out. And one thing that I see from this chapter 54 is that God will give you everything you can handle. He won't give you more than you can handle. Now that works two ways. That works for both blessings and difficulty. So we need to recognize that if God says you're going to inherit this, now whatever this is, sometimes it's struggle, like Job. Job inherited a struggle, and it came because he was being challenged by God and Satan in a conversation going on in heaven that Job knew nothing about. But that became Job's inheritance. It became something that God gave to him. And that's what an inheritance is. It's something that you inherit from someone else, generally after that person has passed and died. All right? And so now what he's saying is everybody's going to get their inheritance, and you're going to get what is yours. And the point I also pull from this is don't worry if somebody else gets more.
Amen.
Because sometimes that becomes an issue for people. Well, he got more than me. Well, no. You just got what you needed. God gave to you what you need, what you can handle. And oftentimes we can find that as being a problem when we see that people get more and we get less. Thank God for what you got. All right? And you'll find out that you will find the joy of the Lord. You can't have joy looking at somebody else's blessing and thinking you should have that. You're going to have joy when you can thank God for what you have. That's where true joy comes from. All right. 55 says, notwithstanding, the land shall be divided by lot according to the names of the tribes of their fathers. So it's going to be, even though we're listing these individuals as a group, we're going to keep the tribes divided by their lot. The tribe of Reuben is going to have a certain lot, but he's not going to have the lot that the tribe of Dan has. Each tribe is going to have their own lot. Right? And God keeps that distinction between them. Right? And so there's a lot we're going to point out, and we've already tried to show you that there's a tendency that travels within each of these tribes. Just like there's a tendency that travels within your family and my family. We all got these genetic precursors to certain things. Sometimes people are just as sweet as their grandmama was sweet. My grandmama was sweet, and her daughter was sweet and all that. But you also got the other side. The grandpapa was fierce and mean and nasty, and his children and his grand are fierce and mean and nasty. There are traits and tendencies that follow a family. And the Lord is allowing us to see this by keeping these families intact, but watching how they strive and do and act, and how God, in spite of all of that, still can use individuals. I already talked about the tribe of Dan, how they're going to have a problem. But there's going to come a mighty judge out of the tribe of Dan. Right? And we'll talk about him when we get to Judges. All right? So in verse 57, we finally get to one tribe that hasn't been mentioned yet, and that's the tribe of who? Levi. Why? Because the tribe of Levi is not supposed to inherit or get any land. All right, they get taken care of by that which the other tribes give them. So in 57 it says, "And these are they that were numbered of the Levites after their family." And then it goes and mentions Gershon and the rest of the family members. But if you go down to verse 59, just to kind of point this out, I think it's good to see. Sometimes people say, well, where did you get the name of Moses' family members? This is where the name here is. Sometimes this is the trivia question. You know, where can you find the name of Moses' parents? And in verse 59, it says here, "And the name of Amram's wife was Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, whom her mother bare to Levi in Egypt. She bare unto Amram, Aaron, and Moses, and Miriam, their sister." So therein is the birth history or birth lineage of Moses and Aaron and Miriam. And a lot of times, if you ever do Bible trivia, people will try to tell you, where to find that. And a lot of times, people try to go into other areas of the book, but it's right here in Numbers. Right,
I have a question. You went to 59.
Mm-hmm.
Is that 58 is not connected with 59? Is it?
No, it's connected. The only reason I'm skipping around like this is because all this is doing is mentioning names, and if I were to just go through each of these names, like I said in the very beginning, this is a very boring and very Salmonex-like chapter. So if we try to just talk about everything in here, all I'm going to say is this was the guy, he had this child, and he had that child. And we kind of got through it when we had the reading done. So I'm only hitting some high points, but this chapter doesn't have a lot of things in it, and some of it's just repetitive, just names and numbers. And that's why I'm skipping around, okay? All right, so it tells us that Miriam and Aaron were born in Egypt, and we know that they came out of Egypt. Now, look at verse 60. And it says, "And unto Aaron was born Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar. Okay, so we already know that Eleazar is now the head priest, because in the beginning of this chapter, the Lord spake unto Moses and Eleazar. Okay, so you go, well, what happened to Nadab and Abiram? Well, remember what happened with them. Let's look at verse 61. It's going to remind us. And Nadab and Abiram died when they offered strange fire before the Lord. So if you remember that, when God had given them the instructions for how to go in to the Holy of Holies and offer up the offerings, Nadab and Abiram were like, oh, this, we're just going in here starting a fire. We're going to go in here and just do some barbecuing, and they looked at it as trite and insignificant and not sacred and didn't put any value on it. And they just went in any old kind of way they wanted to in there. And when they did that, not reverencing the things of God, not seeing that this was a symbol and an analogy to what God was going to do when he offered up the perfect sacrifice of Jesus. God come in the flesh and dying for man. And this was highly sacred and extremely proper in how it was supposed to be handled. And they disregarded all of that. And then what happened? They died. All right? And so God was like, no, you're not going to treat my Holy of Holies any other kind of way. And we talk about that so often because if you come in the presence of God, God is what kind of God? He's a holy God. And if you come into his presence unholy, two things can happen. God can absorb your unholiness, or you have to be wiped out to eliminate the unholiness in his presence. And we know that God is never going to become unholy. So therefore, the consuming fire that God is removes every spot, blemish, and wrinkle in his presence. Why? That maintains the pure holiness of God. He will never be corrupted by somebody else's tainted attitude, mind, thinking, or desires. That will never happen.
That's why we need to be covered by the blood.
And that's why we have to be covered by the blood, Ms. Penny said. And that's true, because the blood does is it gives you that outer holiness that was given to us by Jesus. And then we can bring ourselves into the very presence of God. All right? And then in verse 62, it kind of winds down here, and it says, and those were the numbers of them were 20 and 3,000, all males from 1 month and upward. So when we're dealing with the Levites, we see we got a number of 23,000, and they only counting the males, because only the males can be priests. And they're counting them from 1 month upwards. So with the Levites, we're not waiting until they get 20. We're going to start training them how? From 1 month. What the scriptures say? Train up a child in the way they should go.
The way he should go. And when he's old, he won't depart.
He won't depart. And so the Levites get trained up starting at what? 1 month. That's how they start counting them there. We're going to start letting them know who they are and what their responsibility is. Okay? All right. So, skipping down now to verse 63. Let's take a look at this. It says, these are they that were numbered by Moses and Eleazar the priest, who's numbered the children of Israel in the plain of Moab by Jordan near Jericho. And she's giving us a description of where they are. Look at 64. But among these there was not a man of whom Moses and Aaron the priests numbered when they numbered the children of Israel in the wilderness of Sinai. Okay, and look at 65. 65. It's going to explain it. Look what it says. For the Lord had said of them, they shall surely die in the wilderness, and there was not left a man of them, save Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Joshua, the son of Nun. All right. So we need to talk a little bit about how this 63, 64, and 65 closes out this chapter. It's letting us know. Remember when God told them when they did not want to go into the Canaan land, and they decided that they were going to, just be fearful and not go because they saw themselves as inadequate. And God says, well, because you trusted in yourself and you didn't trust in me, your carcasses will die in the wilderness. So what we see now in 63, 64, and 65 is that prophecy fulfilled. Jesus, the Lord said that they would not enter into the land, and they didn't. Everybody has died except for actually 3 people. It says 2 here, but there's one other person that we need to mention. All right, and remember, and it wasn't so much in every single person. It was everyone that was 20 years and under was still alive. Everyone 20 years and older died. Okay, so what do we see here? The only ones that were still left was Caleb, and we're going to see as we go forward why. And actually, we saw that already. I'll mention that. Caleb and Joshua. Remember when they sent the spies in, the 10 spies? Who came back with the good report? Caleb and Joshua. Exactly. So those were the 2 guys that came back with the good report. And that's why they didn't die in the wilderness with the rest of them. Now, currently, right now, there is still one other person that's still alive. And that's who? Moses. But we know Moses is not going in. Why? Because remember when Moses was told to speak to the rock and have the water to come out? And Moses went and did what? He smacked the rock. He smote it. He hit it. Exactly. And God told him to
speak to it.
Yep, he told him to speak to it. But God told him, because you didn't sanctify properly and you gave a bad image to the people, you will not go into the promised land either. All right. So we see a few situations still that have to be dealt with. We're going to see Moses, but we're not going to see that yet. We're going to get through the book of Numbers, and even when we get to the book of Deuteronomy, that's when we're going to see Moses go up into the mountain, and the Lord's going to deal with him. And we're going to talk a lot about Moses' death, because his death is really unique. And we'll get to that though when we get there. So that's just a little preview of us getting there. All right. So this chapter, which is, like I said, one that didn't have a whole lot of zing and bang and pop to it, a lot of just numbers and names and stuff, it still is significant. And like what our whole mission is here with the Emmaus studies is that we go through and we allow every chapter to be acknowledged and every chapter to be looked at. And so we've looked at this chapter, and I think we've all stayed awake. Everybody's still awake, right?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to stop there. We actually give you some time back. If there are any other comments or questions, please let us hear them now.